بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والعاقبة للمتقين والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي وبعد. Okay, so Alhamdulillah, we're on verse 74 now, Surah Al-Baqarah. Previously, we looked at the story of the Baqarah itself, and we looked at how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala instructed the Bani Israel to slaughter a cow to identify a killer from amongst them who'd killed his uncle in order to attain his rather vast estate. Now, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is quite an interesting verse. It's packed with a lot of meanings. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala now continues, and he starts in the next verse by saying, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ثم قست قلوبكم من بعد ذلك. Okay, then your hearts became hardened after this. Okay, ثم قست قلوبكم من بعد ذلك. Then your hearts became hardened after this. Okay.
What's qasat?
Qasat means to be hardened. So then your hearts became hardened after this. فهي كالحجارة أو أشد قسوة. So they became like stones. Hijara is stones. They became like stones. أو أشد قسوة, or even greater, even stronger in hardness. So qaswa, the same root letters are qasat. Okay, so this is the meaning of hardness. Okay, so the verse, then your hearts became hardened after this, and so they became like stone or even harder. وَإِنَّ مِنَ الْحِجَارَةِ لَمَا يَتَفَجَّرُ مِنْهُ الْأَنْهَارُ. And indeed, there are stones, from amongst stones, لَمَا يَتَفَجَّرُ مِنْهُ الْأَنْهَارُ, that from which gush forth, يَتَفَجَّرُ, gush forth, anhar, rivers. Okay, so indeed there are from amongst stones, inna min al-hijarati, there are from amongst stones those which rivers flow from. Yeah, yatafajjaru, burst from, gush forth from rivers. Wa inna minha, and indeed minha, from them, meaning from stones. So he's describing different stones, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Some stones, there are rivers which flow from them. Some stones, inna minha lama yashaqqaqu. There are some stones which are yashaqqaqu, split, they break. فَيَخْرُجُ مِنْهُ الْمَاءُ, and then water exits from them. So the first type of stones are those who their rivers gush forth from them. The second type, those which break, they crumble, and then water exits, yakhruju, exits from it. وَإِنَّ مِنْهَا, the third type, indeed from amongst them, لَمَا يَهْبِطُ مِنْ خَشْيَةِ اللَّهِ, the stones which fall down, يَهْبِطُ مِنْ خَشْيَةِ اللَّهِ, out of fear of Allah. وَمَا اللَّهُ بِغَافِلٍ أَمَّا تَعْمَلُونَ, and indeed Allah is not unaware of what you are doing. وَمَا اللَّهُ بِغَافِلٍ أَمَّا تَعْمَلُونَ, and Allah is indeed not unaware of what you are doing. So this is an interesting verse, okay, because if we look at it literally, we're talking about 3 sets of stone. So I want to give you a literal kind of imagery, and then I want to also give you the figurative. So the literal is, you imagine you're on a mountain, okay? Now at the peak of the mountain, you have like often the source, yeah, the water source, yeah. This is like, like when you study geography, like the source of the of rivers and stuff. It starts from where? Ultimately, water, it's the source is from the earth's surface, but there are certain stones, certain rock face, which rivers gush flow from them. Okay, so that's there. And there are some stones which are a bit maybe further down due to the attrition of water, right? Basically, they've broken up, okay, and then water's flowing from them. And then there are some stones which go even further down on the mountain, and they're just falling. They're just falling due to maybe the slippery nature of the surface of the mountain. So these are three different types of stone. However, the scholars have said, so what's the connection here? Yeah, what's the connection here in the context of the Bani Israel? So basically, the scholars have said that this is entirely a figurative imagination, like a figurative picture that Allah is creating here. Okay, that basically your hearts became hardened after this, meaning that despite the continual miracles that Allah was showing to them. Now think about this story about the calf. What happened? Okay, let's recap. Okay, that a man, he basically had a lot of wealth, and he had no children, no one to benefit from inheritance. Okay, his nephew, okay, is alive, and he's greedy and he wants to get that wealth, so he kills him, and he throws his body in the middle of in front of somebody else's house. Okay, they wake up and they're like, well, what's his dead body? So they go to the person that you killed him. He goes, I haven't killed him, I don't know who he is, right? So they go to Musa alayhi salam, and Musa alayhi salam, then he says, okay, well, I'm going to go to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So how are we going to adjudicate? How are we going to find out who the killer is? Allah has ordered you to kill a cow. What's that got to do with anything? No, you do what you've been told. And then they ask questions and ask questions and ask questions. Eventually they kill the cow. Then Allah says, فَقُلْ نَضْرِبُوهُ بِبَعْضِهَا. Then get part of the flesh of the cow and place it upon the corpse. And as they place it upon the corpse wakes up and says, yeah, him, he killed me. And then he dies. كذلك يحيي الله بعد موتها. That's how Allah brings life to the dead. Okay, now what a miracle to see someone dead being brought back to life. But the nature of these things, okay, is that it can be a catalyst for someone to get closer to Allah, and also it can be a means of people's hardening of hearts. And this is the thing that's being mentioned here, that their hearts have become hardened. And now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives this metaphor of stones. So he gives three types of stones. He gives one type of stone, okay, which is rivers flow from. So you can imagine the imagery here is the stone is the heart. Okay, so the stone that's been described here is the heart. And there are some stones which rivers flow from them. So the water that's being described here is Iman. That there are some hearts who they are so attached to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they just flow and flow and flow with faith. Okay? In every moment, it's about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This concept of muraqabah, like constantly vigilant of God. In every moment, how am I pleasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? There are some hearts like that. Some hearts who yatafajjar. Now, very interestingly, if you look previously, this word yatafajjar, infijar, has been mentioned previously. Where? When Musa alayhi salam tapped the stone, right? وَإِذِ اسْتَسْقَى مُوسَى لِقَوْمِهِ فَقُلْ نَضْرِبْ بِعَصَاكَ الْحَجَرَ فَانْفَجَرَتْ. Yeah, infijar, yatafajjar, same word, yeah? That basically they asked Musa alayhi salam for water, for rain. So Musa alayhi salam gets his staff and hits it upon the thing. فَانْفَجَرَتْ مِنْهُ اثْنَتَا. Then from it burst forth 12 different springs. Yeah, so here the same thing is being mentioned here about like gushing forth water. Okay, so that's the connection that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying here now, that there are some hearts that they flow and flow and flow with faith. Okay, then there are some hearts who يَشَّقَّقُ فَيَخْرُجُ مِنْهُ الْمَاءِ. There are some hearts which need to be broken. Okay, and then that water comes out. Right, so let's just think about the first example. إِنَّ مِنَ الْحِجَارَةِ لَمَا يَتَفَجَّرُ مِنْهُ الْأَنْهَارُ. There are some hearts who they flow and flow with Iman. And the scholars say that the best example of this is Abu Bakr as-Siddiq. Because Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, was a real person of true faith. From the day he became Muslim, like he was a good person even before Islam. And when he comes into Islam, his Islam is, mashallah, beautiful. To the extent where he would read in one night just one verse and cry all night about one verse. That's the type of faith that we're talking about. Yeah, that towards the end of the life of the Prophet ﷺ, when he's not even able to stand and pray and lead the people in prayer, he says, call Abu Bakr. And say that Aisha, may Allah be pleased with her, she says, she starts to speak for, her and the other wives, like, not sure if I want to bring my father here because, he's too weak. His voice is too weak. When he leads a prayer, he's so enamored and so taken aback by the verses. People, it won't be good. People won't hear him. So they say, oh no, we'll invite. And the Prophet says, no, get Abu Bakr as-Siddiq. Okay? He was a person of true faith. This is what he's talking about. Like their faith was just flowing and flowing and flowing. Okay? Then you have those that yashaqqaqu, their hearts have to be broken. فَيَخْرُجُ مِنْهُ الْمَاءُ. Okay? And so the scholars say the example of this is Umar radhiallahu an. Because Umar radhiallahu an, what happens to Umar? Okay? Think about yashaq means to break, right? So look at Umar radhiallahu an. When he's, firstly, what's his life before Islam? He hates Islam and he's a drunkard, right? So he drinks and then decides, no, I'm going to go kill the Prophet. He goes out, sword unsheathed, and he goes, and you know the famous story, he goes, he meets somebody and says, well, why are you going to try and kill the Prophet? Your own sister become Muslim. So that breaks his heart. Then he goes to the house of his sister. And he goes to the house of his sister, and what happens? He hears her reading Quran. And so he's like, at this moment he's rage, he's anger, yeah, he's not thinking. And then he goes and he's like, what's going on here? Right? And then he has a tussle with his brother-in-law, and then his sister trying to stop him, he slaps his sister. And then blood falls from her face. And then he's like, yashaqqaq. His heart's broken at this point. That's it now. Allah just needed that seed to go in. Now his heart's breaking now. And then what happens? He calms down. Then he said, look, I'm going to read, let me read this. Let me read these verses. She said, go wash yourself first. Yeah, you're not worthy of this. And then he comes and he reads the verses of Surah Taha. Yeah? And he gets to the verse, قَالَ إِنِّي أَنَا اللَّهِ. Indeed, I am Allah. فَعْبُدْنِي. So then worship me. وَأَقِمِ الصَّلَاةَ لِذِكْرِي. And then he says at that point, this is it. I have accepted. His heart's broken again. And then he travels now to the house of the Dar al-Arqam, where the Prophet is sitting. And he gets to the house, and then they see him, like, you could say, quote unquote, in between the blinds, but really in the wood of the door. Oh my God, it's Umar, the great Umar, 8-foot Umar. They're scared, right? And then, the Prophet says, let him come. Yeah, let him come. And then the Prophet, he comes in front of the Prophet, and then the Prophet grabs him. Has the time not come, Umar? Yashaqqaq. Yeah, shaken, broken. And then he falls to his knees and he says, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. That's that shaking. And as soon as that shaking, as soon as that heart needed to be broken, khalas, the iman came out. The very interesting thing someone mentioned about this verse that always stuck with me, many years ago I heard this, that think about the concept of the coconut. Okay, the coconut from the outer has no benefit. If I have a coconut, what benefit does it bring me from the outer? Like, as a full coconut, it doesn't do anything. How do I gain the sweetness? I have to break it. How am I going to get the milk? How am I going to get the sweetness of the coconut? I have to break it. And so what we take from this is that our hearts have to, quote unquote, be broken. Not in the kind of emotional, sad sense, in the sense that we have to go through, test. We have to go through constriction. We have to feel that pain somewhat in order for yakhruju minhul ma, so the water, the iman can then start to flow. The aim is flowing iman, because this here yakhruju is a present tense, meaning that iman flows and it continues to flow, and that's the aim, the continual flow of iman. But you have to go through a type of tribulation, go through test, and then you achieve that. Okay, they say that when you go to sleep at night and you got something that's preoccupying your mind, yeah, some problem, some issue, right, and then slowly that issue goes away. Guess what? there's another one that comes along, another two come along, and this comes along, and that, Allah, our purpose in this life is to be tested. Okay, and what is that? That Allah is breaking that heart. Allah is yashaqqaq, causing that. We might not be of those who yatafajjaru minhu al-anhar, that their hearts continue to flow, their hearts are continuing to flow with faith. Okay, but let us at least be of those who, when we go through test, that we recognize it's from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So important. Okay, and then there are those who yahbitu min khashyatillah, those who fall out of the fear of Allah. So here, no water is mentioned. Okay, there are some who worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but they often don't even taste the sweetness of it. Okay, now this is one of the objectives that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about with regards to faith, that the intention or the aim should be what? You taste the sweetness of it, that it becomes sweet, that when you stand in prayer you're in a state of ecstasy. That should be the intention, that should be the aim anyway, right? But there are some who yahbidu, they fall min khashyatillah, they're just falling due to the fear of Allah, meaning that they will still do their ibadah and stuff like that, but they haven't tasted the sweetness of faith yet. Okay, they haven't tasted that true faith. Now, interesting, there are many people who take religion as a ritualistic thing. So it's all was namaz parodi. Just let's keep praying and pray and pray, and that's it. Might be bad in everywhere else, might be totally bad in terms of character and behavior and everywhere else, but we've got to do these things. So they'll do those, and that kind of comes into this. They're there, okay, out of fear of God, they'll do that. But the true faith, the true realness, that's not tasted. وَمَا اللَّهُ بِغَافِلٍ عَمَّا تَعْمَلُونَ, and Allah is not unaware of what you are doing. Okay, so this hardening of hearts is something that we should be careful of. Now, in closing, the hardening of hearts is something that we should be very careful of, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said in the Quran that يَوْمَ لَا يَنْفَعُ مَالٌ وَلَا بَنُونَ إِلَّا مَنْ أَتَى اللَّهَ بِقَلْبٍ سَلِيمٍ, that on that day no wealth or children will benefit you except the one who comes with a qalbun salim, a pure heart. Right? Now, hardening of the heart is basically, what is that? That is now lack of iman, clearly. That flowing of thing is not there. That flowing of the water, quote unquote, is not there. But also, there's an element of, discontentment, all of these things. So how do we break those hearts? How do we soften our hearts? And the way of softening the heart is the dhikr of Allah. Okay? And the dhikr of Allah contained within that is obviously the Quran, the recitation of the Quran, and also the dhikr, like the adhkar that we do. Okay? Very, very important. That is a true remedy, right, to deal with the problem of hardened hearts. So we should aim to have at least, I was discussing with somebody today, he was asking me, I want to regulate my life in terms of, spiritual betterment. What is your advice? So I said, well, you can, I've read this in this book, I should do this, I should do this. I said, look, your aim should be to read at least one page of Quran every day. And your aim should be to have a set portion of dhikr that you do every single day, right? And as they say, dhikr is had wala had, that the dhikr, it has certain numbers. So for example, we're told to read, for example, 7 times Hasbi Allahu la ilaha illa huwa alayhi tawakkaltu wa huwa rabbul arshil azim in the Quran, in the morning, in the evening. We've been told to read, A'udhu bi kalimatillahi tammati min sharri ma khalaq. All of these dhikrs that we've been told to read in the morning, in the evening, they're all there, and that have a specific number. And why is that number special? Because the Prophet told us to do like that, and there are certain blessings out of that. And then there are dhikr with al-lahad, meaning that it does not matter of the number, but it matters about the time and place in which you do them. So for example, let's say you're cooking, you got to cook every day, right? So let's make the cooking time dhikr time. Let's spiritually cook ourselves, yeah? Or for example, I'm going to work, I'm not going to do anything else, no matter how many times, what do I do? It doesn't matter about the number at that point. It's just the journey from the point I leave to the point I get there. That's laha. Doesn't matter how much it is, that's my dhikr time.
Can you pick any dhikr that you want? Any?
Yeah. Well, so what's the best you can do? Salawat ala Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because the impact of the salawat is great. Okay, in just saying sallallahu alaihi wasallam, what is the impact of that? That Allah sends 10 salutations upon you. That Allah raises you 10 ranks. That Allah obliterates 10 of your bad deeds. That Allah gives you 10 rewards. Okay, I mean just to think that Allah would send salam upon you. I mean, what is that? That Allah sends salam upon you. We can't even begin to imagine that. So anyway, the general point is that we need to be careful of hardened hearts. And one of the problems with hardened hearts is, and one of the signs that a heart is hard is that sin happens, whether they do it themselves or around them, and it doesn't affect them. Okay, that we see fitna, we see bad, and we don't feel there's anything wrong with it. Like nothing stirs the heart, because remember, we're born on fitrah, right? We're born on a primordial good nature. We're not born on bad. We're born on the right side. And so every time the heart is eroded to the extent where it finds bad not bad, that's a problem. Now, what is bad and what is not bad? Well, it's clear. Read the book. It's clear what's good and what's not good. So therefore, if we find that in our lives, and we, that's not stirring us, okay, that's a sign of a hard heart, and of the many others, okay. But that's a kind of a practical, tangible thing that we see situations we're doing or those who are around us. It doesn't affect us. Doesn't irk us. Okay. So we ask Allah that He softens our hearts and He makes us our hearts pure. Okay, because through great hearts we find ourselves in high stations. The final thing I'll say, the really final thing I'll say, is that I sometimes reflect upon this. That us, look at this frugal life that we live in. Yeah, that we are here, in wherever, Wolverhampton, where we are sitting here and just working away and stuff like that. You and I have the potential. We have the potential, right? Think about Jannah. Think about Jannah, getting to the highest level of Jannah. And then in Jannah, you see nothing in the sky except one star, one shining star. And what is that shining star? That is the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He has a special station in Jannah. You and I have the potential. We have the potential to be with him. What is the way? Love. That's it. You and I have that potential. You and I have that potential to be, with the Prophet ﷺ in that station. We have the potential. Yeah. Never ever think that, I've got no chance. Of course, why not? Why not? Okay, but hardened hearts will cause us to be, what if? If only. Yeah, we have a few moments on this earth. Let us make the most of them. Okay, let's make the most of them. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that He protects us from the hardening of hearts, and He softens our hearts, and that the blessings that we see around us, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes them a means for us to gain in proximity to Him. Jalla wa ala. Okay, jazakumullah khairan wa sallallahu